Hello, entrepreneurs. Welcome back to Tea Time with TeaCup Entrepreneurs. I'm Steph Pellish, your hostess here, and today I'm very excited to have Leslie Wheeling join me. And Leslie is an executive coach, a leadership development facilitator, and organizational development leader. We're going to learn all about what those things mean. She's got over a decade of experience helping individuals take control of their careers and lead their departments and organizations. Leslie's worked on a variety of projects to drive business growth through harnessing human potential. And so I'm really excited to dive in with Leslie today and learn more about Leslie. What is an executive coach? First of all, welcome.
So I'm glad to be here.
And so now, what is an executive coach? What exactly does that mean? Because we hear coaching, we hear mentoring, leaders, bosses. We've got all of these titles. And
Yeah,
so, what exactly is an executive coach?
that's probably the most frequent question that I get is what exactly is an executive coach and how does it compare to these other things? And I am a big proponent of having a variety of development tools in your tool belt. Um, the one that most often gets confused is probably a mentor versus a coach. And where a mentor is going to be somebody who has life experience, maybe they have the position you want, or they've been through similar challenges to what you think you'll be facing.
Mhm.
And so you kind of recruit them into your world to share their life experience in the hopes that you can learn from it. I always say mentors are great because learning from experience is best, but it doesn't always have to be your own experience. You can learn
Yes.
from other people's experience too.
Sometimes it's a lot easier if you can gather from someone else's story. It helps you skip those challenges.
Exactly. Yes. Learn from your mistakes, but they don't have to be your mistakes. They can be
Right,
someone else's.
right.
And consulting is different because consultants typically they're hired for their expertise in and experience with a specific type of problem. So you might bring someone in to consult on getting a business startup off the ground or to help you with an integration of a new software or variety of things that you might hire a consultant for. And they're usually bringing their expertise and they're doing a lot of the work to deliver whatever that goal is.
Okay.
A coach is different because a coach is going to work specifically with you on your situation. And the fact of the matter is, I don't know your situation better than you do. So, what I can do is to bring a helpful process and facilitate your own reflection to be able to facilitate your growth.
Okay. So when we're working with a coach, it's a little bit more about developing yourself versus learning from somebody else.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
And so there's an equation. Would you mind if I kind of share an
Sure.
equation with the group?
Go ahead.
So typically, what I see is a lot of people, a lot of managers look at the potential of a person and expect that to equate to performance, right?
Yeah.
So I see a lot of potential in this person. I know that they have the ability to do a good job. And so therefore, I expect that it's just going to happen. They're going to do a good job.
Yes.
It would be great if that's the way the world worked, but it's not, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of an oversimplification.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm going to relate this to something that's as a mom right now with kids in sports. One of my kids is struggling because he can perform some days. He's got the potential to perform, but there are days where he's really struggling. And it's something that I say as a family, we're navigating because some days he can perform and other days that consistency just isn't there. And so
Mm,
knowing that it's there can sometimes be frustrating. It's like, come on, I know you can do this. You've got the potential, but where's that coming out?
right. Yeah. And I love that analogy. I'm going to come back to it a few
Okay.
times probably because I think that's a good one. It's one that people can understand as well. Um, a lot of times we'll see people fall down with this kind of a model because you might promote somebody into a role
Yeah.
and find that they don't perform the way they that you thought they would. And the first question I generally ask is, well, how much did you teach them? Right? Because a new role, every time you move up a level in an organization, there are different expectations. And the skills that helped you to be successful here aren't necessarily the ones that you need to be successful here.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens when you make the next jump and the next jump.
Right. We
So,
usually, what's the saying? I'm sure you know it when you promote someone past their skill because they're doing so
mhm,
well in their
yeah,
current position and you're like, oh, I see the potential for more. But then you're saying that the
that
potential doesn't necessarily match the performance in that next level.
exactly. And it's typically because we haven't given them the new skills, right? We haven't helped
Right.
them to develop those new skills.
Right.
So,
Before putting them into that position.
it, or at the very beginning,
Okay.
either way, it can be done in either place. So you'll see a lot of companies invest in
Okay.
development programs,
Right.
and that's really good. That's helping that next step and that's where my leadership development work comes in, right? This is as you're moving up in an organization, you now need to learn how to set a vision, how to align a team, how to provide support during execution. When you're not the one doing the execution, you're aligning the team to do the execution. Those are all skills that can be developed. And so potential plus development is a much better model.
Okay.
However, you will still find that most people with this model are going to fail at some point, maybe not right away. This might give them the ability to get over that first hurdle because now at least I understand the skill that I need to be in this, whether it's a vice president role or a director or an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
whatever that thing is, I now at least understand the skills.
Okay.
But what happens is that then there's interference comes into play. It can be a lot of different things, right? That might be someone has imposter syndrome or they have this inner critic in their mind that is kind of holding them back. I don't know if I deserve this position. I don't feel like I'm really a vice president. Um, it could be something like that. It can be perfectionism. I see
Okay.
this a lot
So
with
it's
women.
internal, or it can be internal.
These
It's
are
interfering.
internal
Yeah.
examples. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
And
because
perfectionism is one that I see a lot with women. And if you look, our culture, we tend to raise boys to experiment, go try and do. And we tend to raise girls to follow rules.
Mhm.
And so I find a lot as women are promoted, they want to have all of the qualifications before applying for the job. They want to have everything figured out before they put it out into the world. And so what happens is they hold themselves back subconsciously a lot from doing the bigger, better things. They're not living to their fullest potential because they have this idea in their mind that they have to be perfect at it before they can start.
Right. We need to check all of the boxes before we even apply for that position instead of applying for the position and then figuring it out as we go,
Yes.
which is ironic because as many women, moms, we know how to just figure things out.
Yeah.
We're
We're
really
actually
good
exceptional
problem
at it.
solvers. And so it's interesting as you're saying that I'm thinking, well, that's one of our strengths, but it's also something that can really get in our way of holding us back from meeting that potential.
Yes, exactly.
So how do we
Yeah.
get around that?
So there are some tools that I use. There's kind of 6 steps to overcoming a limiting belief. And a limiting belief is a another type of interference. Perfectionism is one of those limiting beliefs. It could also be things like, oh, I'm not smart enough to do that, or I'm too young, too old to do that. I don't have enough experience. And there's 6 steps where we would actually go through to do some things like trying the reverse wording, looking for information and examples, um, testing out some new theories, doing some of these things that will actually um, test your limiting belief to see if it's a real or it's a perceived limiting belief.
Got it. Got it. So what does that, I guess, like, how does that look when it comes to coaching? Like if you're when
Hmm.
you're working with a client one-on-one, what does that really look like?
Yeah. Well, there are, it's an iterative process. So typically, when I start with somebody, we will spend a bit of time at the beginning, depending on the length of the engagement and how clear they are on their goals.
Mhm.
We'll spend some time actually defining the goals. Um, that can be anything from improving my executive presence to getting the job that I want to finding a way to make this work with my life. Um, any of those things can kind of come into play, but we'll spend some time actually defining the goal. And then there is a process that we go through where we'll do some deep questioning around that goal to figure out what your interference is, what's getting in your way of that goal.
Okay.
And so we talked about some of the internal, but I do want to note that there are external interferences as well.
Hmm.
So there might be your a relationship with your boss, or
Yeah.
like their style is different from my style, and like
Yeah.
we're not clicking, and it's hard, and I find myself struggling to make my point or to be heard or to hear what they're saying because the way that they deliver information is triggering for me.
Yeah.
um
Well, I have
so there could Go
I
ahead.
I'm curious too because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of times too, when you get promoted, the person above you has also been promoted.
Mm,
And so is there like, can that play a piece in, oh, I already know how to do this job and now I'll just do it for you, or I don't know how to delegate to you? Like, how do you learn to navigate those
yeah.
interdynamics when either maybe two people are being promoted together, or do you normally see that one person, like
Yeah,
the
so I would
boss,
say
I'll say,
that's
but like,
less common
okay,
for what I deal with, but
okay.
it does exist. And so there's an element called managing up, right? How
Mhm.
do you manage your manager to make sure that he or she is working in a way that is supportive to you and that you're helping them to deliver on their goals? So that may be to help that person to realize what your responsibilities are, what their responsibilities are, and create a working dynamic where you're able to say, hey, Stephanie, I know that you have recently been promoted. What you're working on right now feels like this should be my responsibility, not yours. Are you comfortable giving that to me? And so creating that dynamic. Often what I see is that the person being promoted, the person above them is perhaps new to the organization, or they may have come in from a different area within the organization.
Okay.
So they know the organization and they know the role of a vice president well, but not the vice president of sales, and that's the department that they're now leading.
Okay.
Or they know how to be a vice president of sales, but at a different company. And now they're managing in a different corporate culture and with
Yeah.
different resources, and they're having to adjust to that. So all of those things are external. There's also things that may come into play, like your own financial situation might be an external factor that you have to deal with, an organizational realignment or something along those lines. So the interference can be a lot of different things, right? It can be that external piece, it can be internal to yourself, but whatever that is, we use some deep questioning in our coaching model to figure out what that interference is, and then come up with what I'll call an experiment, right?
Okay.
It's a way to, if you are working on that relationship with your manager, then, okay, I think through our deep questioning, we've found that I think the problem is trust. There's a lack of trust from them to me or me to them. And we need to work on that. We'll set up an experiment for you to go try. What if I do this instead? What if instead of approaching it the way that I always do when they give me a project, what if I do this instead? And then comes reflection. This is, it's based off of adult learning because we actually learn much more by doing than by being told.
Yes. Yes. Unfortunately, right?
Exactly.
If we could just hear it and absorb it and embody it, right? Like if we could learn from other people's mistakes because we just read versus having to try it, maybe our lives would be a little bit better, but also probably less interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It would be less fun along the journey, I think.
yeah, and so I'm actually going to take that transition. So speaking of journey, I know you were in corporate and decided to
Mm.
leave to do this on your own. So I wonder for you, how did you, or what did your work inside of corporate look like to get you to this point, to make you feel like you were ready to go out on your own to support other corporations, other businesses, other people who were looking for this kind of work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I got into organizational development because somebody saw potential in me,
Hmm.
and I didn't know that it was even a career path at that time. I had been working abroad, I'd been working in international marketing and strategy, and somebody saw an organizational development potential within me. And so I moved over. And when I moved into that role, I was suddenly like, oh my goodness, this is fun. I really enjoy it.
It just clicked.
And yeah, it did. And I spent a lot of time working on that harnessing human potential part, right? So it was leadership development programs, it was onboarding, it was building culture, it was working out how to develop succession plans for high potentials, and doing this throughout the organization. And
Okay.
I loved all of that. And I did various aspects and kind of very much grew within that field, in a variety of ways over the years. And what I found was that there was still something missing. There was still this piece missing. So if you go back to that equation, right, I was spending so much time working on the development part. Are we hiring the right people? Are when we bring them in, are we setting them up for success? How are we developing high potential people? How are we creating that path? But some went really well and some were failing, and I could not figure out why until I spent some time with an executive coach. And then kind of did a deep dive into executive coaching. I was like, oh, this is the missing element. This is the reason I saw people come into our organization and fail because they couldn't figure out how to navigate the culture. It wasn't that they didn't understand it,
Right.
but they
Right.
couldn't figure out because of their own internal conflict, they couldn't figure out how to navigate it.
Yeah.
And I saw people fail because they couldn't figure out how to navigate their boss. Their boss had a different style or whatever. And this person who did very well under a different manager was struggling under this manager. I felt it myself. I went through very similar things where under one manager I flourished, and then a different manager I was really struggling, and
In the
where
same
I was
position.
in the same position.
Yeah.
And I went through times where I was promoted and I had that imposter syndrome, right? Where now the budgets that I'm dealing with and the decisions that I'm making are so much bigger than what I had done before that it was almost paralyzing to me. And I was having trouble moving forward because I felt like I needed to make the right decision. And to make the right decision, I needed to do more research, more research, more research. And I
Which
needed,
probably
I
kept you out of actually doing the job that you
did,
needed to do.
yeah, analysis paralysis, right?
Yeah.
That's clearly where I was.
So I'm going to say to me, it seems obvious that corporations, businesses, this would be an incredible asset to any business. So how many businesses or like are businesses doing this on their own? Are corporations doing this on their own where they have internal people like you, executive coaches, or do they hire out executive coaching? Or is this something that people need to do individually to get access for executive coaching?
Yeah. So both are true. Some
Okay.
people reach out to get an executive coach personally because that they feel that it's important for them, their career, and that development. A lot of times it is by the hired by the organization. I'm hired by the organization to develop somebody who is maybe high potential. They've recently been promoted up a level and to help them be successful in that new role. Or they're coming in from the outside, like I was mentioning, right? They've been
Mhm.
a VP of sales at a different organization. Now they're
Right.
VP of sales at this organization, different culture, different environment, helping them to be successful. And sometimes it's a scaling up of the business. So the overall business is growing at a very high scale. And so they are looking for coaching for one or many of their leaders to be able
Right.
to collectively make that jump from this size of a business, from a small business to a medium sized business, for example.
Right. I love that. And I know you do a little bit of work with your local Chamber of
Chamber of
Commerce.
Commerce.
So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about what's the program and how that works.
Yeah. So the program, it's the Indian Valley Chamber of Commerce, and the program is called Lead Indian Valley. And it's really kind of a hidden gem. Essentially, it targets small to maybe medium sized businesses that maybe don't have the bandwidth to have a full development program within their organization, or they have a few standalones that they need to have further development for some reason. A lot of times it's people that are making that switch from manager to director level, or maybe director to VP, depending on the size
Okay.
of the organization and how their titles work.
Hmm.
Um, but it is a development program where we go through all of those skills of being a leader, right? So, how to build a vision, how to create alignment on a team, how to lead execution, how to build a team that is functioning and cohesive, how to manage through change, how to have productive conflict. Those are all parts of that program.
Yeah.
And the members of the chamber have access at a reduced rate to that to send someone into the program. It runs for 9 months, once a month from September to May. Um, and it's a fun program. I really enjoy it.
Yeah. And so I would imagine, I don't know if this program specifically, but I would imagine that in terms of executive coaching, if you're going from manager to director, there are pieces that you're going to learn and pick up. But then when you're going from director to, I think you said VP, right? Like there are going to be new pieces. So you would benefit both ways that you're not going to just
Mm-hmm.
learn everything you need going from manager to director, knowing what you're going to need at VP, that there are different pieces, same concepts, I'm sure, but
Mm-hmm.
navigating them in different ways or
Yeah,
understanding, again, the responsibility, another step up, another level up, new level,
it gets
different
more
devil, right?
complicated, right? It gets progressively more complicated the further you
Yeah.
advance in an organization. And so while building alignment may have come easily to you as a frontline supervisor. When you get to a manager level or when you get to a director level and you're managing multiple different specialties, building alignment may become very difficult because
Yeah.
now it's harder to figure out what that goal is that we're aligning to. So you're absolutely right that like the same skills at different levels, it all hits a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I like about coaching, executive coaching, is being able to take that development skill and then apply it to your specific situation, right? So maybe you have learned about setting a vision in the past, but that was never an issue for you. You always were working in an area that you understood very well. And now you've been moved from sales that you understand very well. And now you're leading the marketing team. And that is different. And setting a vision there becomes harder. Well,
Right.
as we go through a coaching engagement, right, we spend some time to define that problem and then figure out what your interference is. And then how can we design an experiment for you to go test, come back and reflect so that we deepen that learning and actually get that into a habit that you can continue to do as opposed to something that you learned out of a book and will have some impact, but
Yeah.
we don't internalize it.
Right. So I'm curious to know now that you're a solopreneur, an entrepreneur out on your own, how does
Yeah.
all of this work kind of relate to you?
How does it relate to me as a person or
Well, how, like going into working for yourself, how did you set yourself up to work for yourself? Because that's like that's a promotion. You now work for yourself. There's nobody else
yes.
giving you guidance and structure. And so, what skills from that
Yeah.
leadership, that development, have you had to apply for yourself?
All of them. Yeah.
You get to wear all the
That is
hats
the
now.
yeah. And fortunately, that's something that I like. I like wearing a lot of different hats, and
Uh-huh.
that's why organizational development was always a good fit for me because of the breadth of it. Um, and that's just been expanded as an entrepreneur. There's a couple things I want to mention here. One is that I have an executive coach. And so that person really helped me as I was navigating leaving a job that I liked at a company that I liked, and getting out to where I was doing something on my own. This person really kind of helped me to navigate that in a way that I felt good about.
So it's not necessarily a promotion. It could be, like I said, a promotion in your own life where you're going
Yes.
to take on a role as solopreneur, entrepreneur, new business owner,
Hmm.
CEO.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so that person has been very helpful to me as I navigate the beginning of setting up my own business and sometimes feeling really good about it and then other days feeling completely lost and like I don't know what I'm doing. They've
We've
helped
all been there.
yeah, they've helped me through their questions to kind of define what problem you're feeling overwhelmed and nervous in general, but like what is the issue, right? And kind of mining to figure out what that issue is. And once I have it defined, it's so much easier to solve. It's when it's
Yeah.
undefined that it is overwhelming and scary. And one of the things that my coach helped me to uncover was that my network was all in corporate world, right? My family, friends, and professional colleagues all work in traditional jobs.
Mhm.
And um, and so I didn't know any entrepreneurs. I don't know what that looks like. It was like a foreign concept to me. So once I defined that, it was really easy for me to see like, oh, that's a need. I need to be around other people who are doing this and are doing it in a way that I want to do, right? A way that
Right.
feels natural, authentic, and fits with what they are building for not just their career, but their whole life,
Yeah.
the
And
whole life. And
obviously
that's where
with
TeaCup came in.
TeaCup, right? And with
Yeah.
TeaCup, that was the problem that I was trying to solve for myself was I did know a lot of entrepreneurs, but I didn't have them around me. I grew up,
Mm,
my dad owned his own business, his family owned their own business, but it was already well established. And so
hmm.
I didn't see it from ground
Startup.
up. And it wasn't a
Mhm.
solopreneur. They had small business, but they had about 800 employees. So, that wasn't where I was coming in. And
Hmm.
so being by myself and now with being a solopreneur, you can do everything from home. You can do everything behind your
Yeah.
computer. But I really felt the disconnect from that.
Yeah.
And so I know you reached out and part of it for you, I'll let you share, but part of it for you, you were like, please still be there.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I realized that, when I made that connection with the help of my coach, that like, oh, I part of this is that I just don't know the people. There are lots of people in the world who are doing this, but they're not in my community. They're not in my network. And I need some exposure therapy. um, and so right about that time is around the time that you were launching Teacup.
Mhm.
And I reached out immediately because I was like, I am not quite ready for this yet. I was not transitioned out of my corporate role. I wasn't ready to launch my business at that time. But this was exactly the network, the way that you were talking about it, the collaborative minds, the networking, yes, but also the support.
Yeah.
The fact that it is women coming together to talk business and talk about their businesses and what they want to do, how they want to grow, and supporting each other through that. It's like, that's what I need. And I really want to be able to be there, but I can't yet.
Yes. But we
So,
but we got you there.
you certainly, yeah. And I really feel, I'm very passionate about it, that there is magic in collaborating with others, not necessarily in the execution of your business, because we all have different businesses in Teacup, but it's in the brainstorming, it's in the support when you run into challenges, it's in the um general growth and understanding what it can be like, a few steps ahead of me on my path and a few steps behind. Right. So I can pull someone forward that is a few steps behind me, and there's someone ahead of me that can do the same for me.
Yeah, and
And
in
so
different
that
areas.
all comes together in a beautiful way.
Right? In different areas too, because while you might be 3 steps ahead of someone in one area, they might understand the marketing 3 steps ahead of you, and you're in sales three
Yeah.
steps ahead of them. And so that's where that collaborative piece is, where it might not be, hey, we're working together to create this program, or we did this project together. It's more the collaboration of, hey, how can we work together to grow both of our businesses because we're sharing more.
Yeah.
And you have been a very integral piece of the last couple months of being a part of our community because I've noticed that you have a very unique sense of looking at things because you come from not just corporate. We have a lot of women who come from corporations, but you come from that organizational piece. And a lot of our entrepreneurs come from I have an idea, I'm a dreamer, let me put this out there. And so we need some more of that structure, myself included. And I know we've had this conversation of, I need a little bit more structure. I need someone to support me in that because I'm the dreamer. I've got all these ideas. I then need to put it together and prioritize
Yes.
it. And so I really appreciate your ability to see that in the group and kind of pull it together sometimes. So it's been a great experience having you to join us in Teacup, and we're glad that you could make it.
Thank you. It's been great for me as well.
Awesome. So if somebody wanted to find out more about Leslie Wheeling and her coaching and executive coaching, where would they find you?
The place I'm most active is on LinkedIn. So if
LinkedIn.
you go to
Okay.
LinkedIn and search for Leslie Wheeling, that's where I am most active, especially in that professional space.
Hmm.
You can also follow me on Instagram, Leslie Wheeling, or on Facebook under the same name. All of that is out there, or you can reach out to me directly. My email is leslie.a.wheeling@gmail.com. Um,
Yeah. And we'll
and
link
yeah,
all
I'd
of
love to
that. So
hear
if
from you.
anybody's like, where are all those things? We'll link all of
Yeah,
those in the show notes so that you can find them. But Leslie Wheeling in all of the places.
that's right.
And again, Leslie, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise with us and a little bit about how we could all benefit from executive coaching and all of the things.
Thank you. Thanks, Steph. Great to be
Well,
here.
thank you. And Teacup Entrepreneurs, join us next time for our next episode with Tea Time with Teacup Entrepreneurs.